Hello guys, I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. This is AfriPost and welcome to today's video. We know that there are over 200 million people of African descent living outside the African continent. Many of these blacks are domiciled in the United States, some of them are in Europe, some are in China and all other areas. But then these people have continued to face serious challenges, especially when it comes to systemic racism and also discrimination. And this has affected how their life outcome has always turned out. Now, I came across this clip of a white guy trying to really ask himself some pertinent questions. He was giving his experience in Africa and asked some good questions that I want us to listen to and answer after the video. Let's watch.
I've lived in 5 different countries in Africa. I've lived in Malawi, Botswana, Zambia, Morocco, and Nigeria. I have also travelled extensively in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Egypt. Never once in all my years of living or travelling on the African continent have I been mistreated in any way because of my ethnicity, because of my skin colour. And this is in spite of the fact that I come from a country who are guilty for some of the worst colonial crimes ever inflicted throughout human history. That's right, I was born in Great Britain. And without doubt, the British and the French committed the greatest atrocities across the continent of Africa. The Belgians have a good claim for the greatest atrocity in their treatment of the Congolese, but if one looks at it as an entity and the number of countries that were invaded by the British and French colonialists, one will see that they are the worst protagonists. Despite this, and despite the behaviour of my ancestors, I have never been mistreated. In fact, I have been welcomed warmly in all of the countries I have lived in or visited. And when in Africa, I don't cocoon myself in some enclave dome which is inhabited by people who like to refer to themselves as expats. I hate that term. But no, I integrate as much as possible within local society. I will go to a shebeen. I will go to any compound and experience life as it is for people in the country where I am based. So whether that's in the village, whether it's in the township, whether it's in the local bar, I will integrate, I will mix, and I am always made welcome. Now contrast that with the way many Africans are treated when they choose to live in the United Kingdom or France or other parts of Europe. The difference is incredible. The everyday racism experienced by African people on the European continent is a crime against humanity. Now, there are different types of racism. The most obvious is the day-to-day experience that an African will have whilst living in parts of Europe. The name calling, the staring, the subtle discrimination. And for many Africans, they will just brush it off because it is so common that they just get used to it, sadly. Worse, though, is the institutional and structural racism that Africans have to abide with. The restrictions on their movements, the fact that most passports emulating from the African continent will only allow Africans to travel visa-free to a handful of countries. And most of those will be other African countries or countries in the Caribbean. And moreover, the difficulty that Africans have finding work in Europe is unimaginable. People who are qualified as doctors, accountants, lawyers, university lecturers, nurses, teachers, do not have their qualifications and experiences recognized by most European countries. I know many people from Africa working in various parts of Europe as security guards or as care assistants when back home they had highly skilled professional jobs. But that experience is rarely recognized when they come to Europe unless they come as part of a transfer with an existing company. But if they come because they've migrated to Europe, their chances of accessing the sort of job which they are eminently capable of is slim. Now, if a black person was making this video, they would be quickly dismissed. They'd be dismissed as having an axe to grind or always trying to find problems. And again, that's part of racism. The fact that I can speak because of my white privilege means that I have a duty to do so, not because I'm married to an African woman or because I have many African friends, but because I like to think I'm a decent human being who appreciates the value in every person on our planet.
Now, after watching that video, if you're a black person living, let's say, in Europe or living in the United States, have you experienced any form of racism or discrimination just because of your skin color? And also, if you're a white person watching this video, have you experienced any form of racism from a black person? Or if you've visited Africa, have you received any racial hatred or discrimination based on your skin color when you visited the continent? Because I like what the guy really comes out to speak. He highlights that he has a lot of African friends and he's lived with them without any challenge he can call to be racially targeted against him. He looks at what British did in Africa. He looks at what French colonies have gone through, and he wonders why, regardless of the number of times he has traversed different countries in Africa, he has never been discriminated against. He has never faced any racial abuse. He has never faced any racial discrimination. But then, this really brings me to one point here. If you want to know the race that is always very accommodative, the race that has never known how to discriminate, it is the black race. We have gone through a lot of challenges, but we have always accepted our other races and welcomed them home. And in some areas, we even think of them highly, because in Africa, what we were taught is that a white person is a little bit superior than who we are. While this is not the case, many of us in school or while still young, we felt like white people were some superior beings. So this kind of education tried to formulate our minds such that we have always respected white people. Apart from that, just by nature, even if you look at how our cultures are designed, many of our cultures always appreciate visitors. And that is how we have continued to coexist with each other without any challenge, regardless of the number of tribes that we have within our countries. For instance, a country can hold over 100 tribes, yet these people can coexist peacefully within the African continent. This is because the nature of our existence, our societies, are knitted in a way that we tend to appreciate visitors and we tend to appreciate our neighbors. So I believe that one of the reasons why Africans have not shown any form of racial hatred against white people, regardless of the challenges we've gone through, regardless of the atrocities we've committed in our continent, is that we are by nature welcoming people. And this has really worked to put us in a way that many might think we are fools, many might think that we are not really understanding who we are. But I believe it is something that has given us power that nobody really understands. And one thing we must ask ourselves is this character or this culture good for us as Africans, or it is something that is working against us? From my side, I tend to think that this thing has allowed some white people to take advantage of us, because look at how Western nations take Africa. Countries like France continue to take advantage of Africa. They have for years taken out our natural resources to their countries, processed them, and then resold them to us to have us pay more. Another thing is the colonial tax that French colonies continue to pay to date. And we have seen countries in the Sahel region calling and saying that they are not going to accept further exploitation from France, because they are saying the issues of colonial tax must come to an end and we are not going to pay them. They have said they will never continue to pay the colonial tax. And this is a stand that for me, I tend to support. So I think that the fact that we have always been very passive and we don't want to have a confrontational kind of a coexistence with our Western brothers, this has given them an opportunity to exploit us, to use our resources without us having any say over those. Please tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. Do you really agree with the guy who has been speaking in that video? Has he spoken some sense into you? And if you're watching us for the first time, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you. May the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.